Our student Mr. White has been massively destroying the ranked ladder recently by just applying some simple rules we've given him that make the game stupid easy. But as he started to climb into gold, he's experiencing issues that many of you are all too familiar with.
Yo, we have 4C.
Show me where to go.
Why are we losing?
Oh,
What am I doing, bro?
switching sides.
Another win.
Up until now, we've been able to help Mr. White cheat his way into gold by teaching him proper fundamentals. But now that he's got a few hours under his belt, it's time that we actually dive into his mechanics. You see, the thing is, for a gold player, Mr. White is actually really good. I mean, like, stupid good. Like, look at this guy. It feels like the moment he sees a player on his screen, he looks like the frickin' Terminator.
Enemy down. Sage killed. Turret destroyed. Headshot.
But then, the moment that there's not an enemy on his screen, he starts walking like a complete bot. We're going to fix this in today's video and completely make over Mr. White's gameplay by giving him one simple rule that I believe, if applied correctly, could easily double his kills. I know, sounds ambitious, but that's kind of what we do here at SkillCapped. We give you guys stupid simple rules so that you don't even need to think about what you're doing. You just win. That's what we've been teaching Mr. White all throughout this series that has had him ranking up twice as fast as the average player. Currently this act, he has nearly a 70% win rate in gold and is rapidly approaching platinum. And luckily for you, we've included every single coaching session that we've had with Mr. White with all of the rules that we've taught him in our handy dandy Iron to Diamond course over at SkillCapped. You'll see all of the advice given to Mr. White to get him looking like the Terminator and ranking up stupidly fast. Along with this, you'll see all the other courses that we've created for Mr. White, such as our brand new Killjoy course, or even our new agent cheat sheet, which tells you the best positions to play on every single agent. With over 60 courses on our site, we've got everything that you need to climb quickly in Valorant. In fact, we're so confident in that we offer a rank improvement guarantee. So if you don't climb, you don't pay. So if you're looking to rank up like Mr. White has this act, be sure to check out SkillCapped. And other than that, let's take a look at the rule that we're going to give to help Mr. White double his kills. We actually didn't bother breaking this down in previous videos because when you're this new to the game, you'll improve super fast by just playing it. The newer you are to something, the more valuable every hour spent doing it is. Think about it this way. If you only have 10 hours playing Valorant, if you invest an additional 10 hours, you've literally doubled your overall playtime. You'd probably get significantly better in hour 20 than you were in hour 10. However, if you have 1,000 hours playtime, an additional 10 hours isn't going to change much. And that's kind of the thing with your aim early on. Because we could tell you all about crosshair placement and how to do the perfect peek, but he just doesn't need that stuff early on. Instead, what I wanted to give him was good habits that he could carry with him into higher ranks while we waited for him to get more comfortable with the gunplay. That's why we told him to get used to looking at his map in the first few seconds of the round and taught him the mirror rule in our second episode when playing with teammates. Because these are things that just won't improve naturally with time. But if he doesn't practice aiming, he's still going to have to take gunfights in game, so we didn't complicate the aiming process. What we did is I told him to watch our Aim God course, which is an hour-long masterclass that details everything you need to know about aim, just so we got a good idea of what to focus on, and then I told him to queue 15 death matches over the weekend. After that, we set a goal for him to play around 1 to 2 death matches a day and 2 ranked games a day to make sure that he is consistently playing the game. This is a pretty reasonable schedule that most players could absolutely follow that would naturally help them improve and develop their mechanics. And this works because as long as you know what you're doing, the act of aiming in Valorant isn't actually as crazy as you think. At least not at lower ranks. As long as he watched our Aim God course and played the game, it was a sure bet that his mechanics would at least be passable up until around platinum. However, passable isn't going to carry you much further than platinum. Eventually, you're going to need to tune them a bit, which is exactly what we're going to do today. So let's talk about gunfights. I'll make it super simple with an easy rule for you guys to follow, but first, watch these clips of Mr. White dying and tell me what they all have in common. Do you guys see it? It's kind of subtle in some of these clips, but it's definitely there and it's a massive issue. Some of these deaths are definitely worse than others, but he's making the same mistake in all of them. Here, we'll show one more clip, and now, what do you think it is? Some of these things were present in 1 or 2 of the clips, but the main answer I was looking for was option 3. Mr. White's movement kind of sucks, but what's so bad about it? I think it's easiest to see in this clip.
Bro.
Do you see how Mr. White is in this narrow corridor and he keeps just walking forward and then backwards? This is horrible. You really want to avoid forward and backward movement in Valorant because it makes you a super easy target to hit, while also making you completely inaccurate. Basically, if you're walking in a straight line like this, when somebody swings you, it's as if you're just standing still. Not only that, but you're standing still and can't shoot because you're moving. And Mr. White's bad habit isn't exactly that he's peeking angles like this all the time. I mean, he does it sometimes, but it's actually that he inputs these forward, backward commands constantly while holding angles. Take a look at this ghost clip as we slow it down, and do you see how he keeps inching forward and then backwards for literally no reason? Then, when he eventually peeks the Phoenix, because he was so used to pressing W, he ends up again pressing W right as the fight starts to take place. Now, these little micro stutters might not seem like they matter that much, but take another look at that final death. He inches backwards and then tries to inch forward and gets swung while doing so. There's another issue in this clip, how he's exposing himself to 2 angles, but I mostly want to focus on this movement habit because it's just really bad. The rule of this episode is that you never want to hold W when taking a gunfight, which is something many of you may have already heard, but we wanted to introduce the second, more interesting part of this rule that rounds it out a bit better. Because we can tell Mr. White to never hold W, but all of these fights also take place when he's trying to scale up through an entryway. So if you can't hold W, how the hell are you supposed to scale up? Well, this is where it gets complicated. You see, the number one rule with peeking is that you are able to swing an angle by only pressing A or D. You want the peek to be as simple as possible. You press one button and it brings your character around the angle. You don't hold shift, you don't hold W, and you certainly don't hold S. You just press A or D. Now, here is the other half of that rule. If you can't peek the angle by only pressing A or D, what you need to do is safely get to a position where you can. So what do I mean by that? Well, what I want to do is try to get you into the mind of a higher elo player. Because anytime you're pressing W, you should be scared to get peeked. You should feel vulnerable. With this in mind, you want to minimize the risk of being peeked while you're holding W. To do this, you need to path in a way that protects yourself the most as you're scaling up. When you're pressing W to scale, in a way, you're hiding. And if you're not hiding, you're doing it in a way that lets you scale as fast as possible. So for example, take a look at how I would clear C-Link on Lotus. Notice how anytime I need to hold W, I'm trying to stand off to the side so that the corner of the wall will protect me from anybody peeking. But as soon as I go for a peek, you'll see how I release the shift key as well as W and only hold A or D. This is because I'm peeking an angle somebody is likely to be holding or swinging me from, so I want to peek it as quickly as possible. So basically in these areas, you're going to have to take some sort of a gamble to scale up, but you want to protect yourself as much as possible so that it's unlikely you get swung while doing so. Now some of you might think, but Casey, by the destructible door, wouldn't you be at an angle disadvantage if you peeked like that? To which you are correct. There are narrow positions like this across most maps that don't really give you enough room to work with. When you compare my peek to Mr. White's though, you'll notice how he tried to peek along the back wall and he just didn't have enough room to do a proper peek. Because of this weird W peek on the back wall, he basically just ran into the doorway and then came to a sudden stop. If you compare this to the peek that I showcased, notice how I'm able to swing out quickly from the wall. This gives me a much more favorable gunfight because I'm not just running onto the opponent's screen slowly. Other locations you can see similar pathing would be when pushing C from Garage on Haven or when pushing Lane on Ascent. In both of these positions, you generally don't want to run along the left wall. You actually want to scale up on the right wall and then quickly swing when you get closer to the angle. This sort of movement doesn't come naturally, and even as somebody who's familiar with it, it's still pretty difficult to describe. The best way I can phrase it is that every time you're holding W, you should feel afraid to be swung. Almost as though you're hiding so that if somebody swings, they're either not going to see you or they won't be looking at you. This is far more important than you realize though, because in Mr. White's case, his inability to scale like this is actually harming his ability to make plays. Oftentimes I'll give students the feedback to just hold angles and wait for enemies to swing into them, but this has the chance to backfire because what happens if the enemies just don't swing you? Well, for Mr. White, normally when that happens, he just loses the round. Take a look at these few rounds and see if you understand the issue.
Enemy spotted A.
Finished.
You want more? Here's more.
Imagine if I die. Last player standing.
One B.
Do you see how it feels like he's afraid to make plays? Kind of just sits there, and if they swing him, he sits them down, and if they just don't swing him, he just loses. Because he's too afraid to scale up, he's literally just letting the spike tick down and not giving himself enough time to even have a chance to win. And I mean, in the last round, his team wins, but it's not because he did anything. He was in such a good position to lurk, and he even called for his teammates to rotate over, but he just didn't take the opportunity to make a play. He's in the right positions to make things happen, but he doesn't have the confidence to ever actually do it, and that's very likely because his peaks just suck. When you're peaking properly, like I showed you, if somebody is holding the angle, you actually have the advantage. If you swing somebody like this, they will not have the time to react. You will sit them down. And if you're scaling up silently, they likely won't even be expecting you. I've explained to Mr. White why lurking is important in our course, but the lurks actually don't nearly matter as much if you don't have the confidence to do anything with them. And of course, he gets rewarded sometimes because enemies will just walk into him, but if they don't, he's kind of just dead weight. He could be running the game if he was silently scaling up like I showed in this video, but he hadn't practiced it. And that's my fault because until today, I hadn't taught him it. That being said, believe it or not, this game was actually Mr. White's Gold 2 rank up, which is pretty freaking cool. We started working with him when he was Iron 3, and after a little over 100 hours of game time, he finally hit Gold 2. With a 70% win rate this act, he is climbing. Not only that, but he is having fun while doing it.
It's okay, bro. You destroy them later.
Ruin their day.
Is it SOD? Oh, thank you for the game. Nice, GG.
Attackers win.
Thank you for the games, guys.
The next episode might be a little bit delayed because Mr. White has got some school stuff to focus on, but hopefully when we come back, we can announce that Mr. White has officially hit platinum. And if you guys want to catch these full coaching sessions, as well as all of the other advice that we've given to help our Killjoy main rank up thus far, remember that we are documenting it all over in our Iron to Diamond course at SkillCapped. We included every course, coaching session, and video sent to Mr. White all in one place so you can copy the exact process that he followed to start climbing rapidly. All of this is backed by a rank improvement guarantee as well, so if you don't climb, you don't pay. This is a great way to get a ton of value and catch up really fast on everything that you need to know about Valorant. Also, every subscription makes my bosses like me just a little bit more, so if you enjoy the series like this and want to support the channel, I highly recommend checking it out. Other than that, my name is King, and we here at SkillCapped want to thank you all for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.